I the asshole for not wanting to name my 33M son Jonghyun? My wife, 32F, and I are expecting our first bundle of joy. We're absolutely thrilled. I personally can't wait to be a dad. The due date is April 21st. We're from Ireland. My wife has been a huge fan of the South Korean boy band SHINee since 2008. Their music apparently got her through a lot of tough times. Jonghyun was a member of this group. He unfortunately passed away in 2017. From what I've read online about him, he seems to have been an amazing guy. My wife was devastated when she found out about his death and told me that when we'll have a kid and if it's a boy, she's going to name him Jonghyun in his honor. At the time, I didn't really take her seriously. The time has come though, and she's very serious about it. She wasn't joking. She even picked out the meaning because it actually depends on the Hanja characters you use. His passing is a sensitive topic, absolutely. I would even content warning advisory for it. If anyone's talking about it. She speaks Korean, I don't. I love how the name sounds, the nickname Jong and the meaning, but the issue is we're both 100% white. I'm literally blonde with green eyes and she's ginger with blue eyes and fair skin. Legit as white as they come. I told her that I don't think this is appropriate because we have no Korean blood in us, and she said that's not a problem since it's cultural appreciation and not appropriation. She told me she doesn't want to compromise when it comes to the first name and I can just pick whatever middle name I want and she's going to be okay with it. She said that this name means too much for her to give up on it. Her favorite singer and artist born in the same year as her, our son is going to be born in the same month as him, etc. That'll be one confused ass kid when he grows up, he'll have an identity crisis. That's true too. This would be up for more debate if it wasn't this specific man's name. Yeah, I agree. Okay, before we read the comments, let's vote. This is an interesting one, y'all. I do feel like I can understand where OP's wife is coming from, right? But names are very, very culturally contextual in many cases, right? And especially in Jonghyun's case, like the way he passed was like traumatic for a lot of people, and it was not like, it's not a happy story, and that's a lot of like baggage to be carrying and then to pass on to your kid. I'm like, man. I think I would lean more info needed also, but also I just think OP's right. I just like agree with OP. I also hope they have Korean friends they can talk to about this. I feel like even as much research as you've done, taking an obviously cultural name different from your own is up for debate. Yeah. There's a lot of nuance in that cultural appreciation versus appropriation topic. Exactly. It's such a fuzzy line. And like, obviously, like it's not coming from nowhere. Like she's learned the language even, but like still concerning in this specific case, especially, I guess. Yeah. All right, let's wrap this, y'all. 56.4% said not the asshole. The remaining 35.9% said no assholes here, followed by the third place, which is 6.4% more info needed. I pretty much agree with that distribution. Not the asshole. Let's see what people are saying, yeah? I think maybe your wife needs to stop thinking about what she wants and start thinking about having a traditionally Korean name will impact your unborn child as they progress through life. Your son would get shit for that from the first day of school. It's so true. God, it's so true. That was a toughie, wasn't it? I agree. People use the bullying argument a lot when it comes to stupid names, which is legitimate. This was removed by a mod. Why? But more than that, I think it's completely unfair to saddle your child with your personal fandom before they're even born. It's pure narcissism. It's appropriate for a cat or a fish, but not the whole ass human being who hasn't even had a chance to establish their own identity yet. I was getting cut off, sorry about that. It's nuanced. It's a nuanced discussion. And I think almost every single one of them is like a case by case kind of judgment, right? And no one, that's the thing with cultural appreciation and appropriation is like, no one can give you permission. Like, just because like one of your Chinese friends said it was okay to name your character Cho Chang doesn't mean that you've now gotten permission, right? Like this one Chinese friend was okay with it, sure. But like that one Chinese person doesn't speak for like all of the Chinese ethnicity and cultural background and diaspora, right? So it's a little, you know, it's a little tricky, right? One of the examples I like to go to a lot is, was it Jeremy Lin? Jeremy Lin getting dreadlocks was a really interesting case for the appreciation versus appropriation discussion, because he had like entire conversations with his like teammates, right? Like many of whom are Black, lots of conversations about like whether it would be appropriate for him or not. You know, like hair carries a lot of meaning across lots of different cultures. And for him, it was like a sort of cultural exploration, perhaps more so than appreciation or appropriation. It was about exploration. And his teammates had been like, basically told him to go for it, thought it was interesting that he wanted to try it out. Like they had those conversations, but his teammates couldn't give him permission to get dreadlocks on behalf of like all of Black America. Like that's not how that works, right? So I guess inevitably he got like blowback for it, and I think ended up like issuing an apology for it or something. I don't remember how that resolved, but for me that's like an interesting case of like, yeah, you're in, you know, an industry or a cultural environment where you're immersed in a certain culture, I guess, that isn't perhaps your own necessarily. And you've had all the conversations and the considerations, you've like seriously thought about this decision. Certain people have given you the green light, certain people may have not agreed, and then you decided to go through with it. Like it's so complicated. Which is why I just like my one wish for the appropriation versus appreciation conversation is I wish people wouldn't make it so black and white. Like I wish people gave us a little bit more wiggle room for like nuance in that space, right? Just, yeah, it's tricky. It's a tricky conversation. There's never a black and white situation. There's always a gray area. People just don't like dealing with it because it is complicated. Exactly. Yeah. And so I don't know. I also just think that like internet culture has led to a situation where like we're very quick to like jump to attack people and like assume the worst, or like we see things in very black and white. And I just don't think that is the case. And that's why I like ambiguous "Am I the asshole?" posts, because I'm like, there's nuance in a lot of situations. There's room for interpretation, and everyone's different experiences lead to them having different understandings of a situation. So I like that. I like gray zone. Cultural appropriation is a very difficult topic, I feel like, since people seemingly seem to create this catch-22 where it isn't ever possible to get permissions, since it isn't like you can referendum the entire culture, or could even. Like you simultaneously have to get permission, but culture also isn't some monolithic being that's owned by an individual person. Exactly. So I guess the whole point is that you don't have to get permission. Like it's impossible to get permission. In fact, you shouldn't even really try to get permission. But there's so much nuance. We live in such a colorful world, and I just wish we could all embrace that a little bit more, instead of just being like, you don't get to do that at all. I don't know. I've been on the other side too. I've gotten really mad about like, I remember there was a post, there was like, does anyone remember like the Chipal prom girl from a few years back? This is like my bad. I honestly really regret the way I reacted to this, but a few years ago, some girl, 2018, something like that. Some girl was going to her high school prom. She wore a chipal that she like found at a thrift shop, I think she said, to her high school. And I was just like really incensed by it, because in that moment, I just happened to be reading up on like Chinese like revolutionary history and like women revolutionaries, and like the chipal as a form of like, as a symbol of a lot of different evolutions culturally that have happened in Chinese culture in recent decades, right? So like it just happened to be front of mind for me at the time as well. I kind of like blew up a little bit, got really mad, made a really big like angry post on Facebook about it, where I was like, oh, like I'm like, our culture and history is just a trend to you, you know, like this is so disrespectful. I was really mad. Like in retrospect, I think I understand where it was coming from. Like I understand why I was upset, but I think I overreacted also, because like when I showed it to my mom also, she was like, I think it's cute. Like I think it's nice that people feel like the chipal is a cute look and that they would want to wear it to their prom. But also, I'm just tired of white girls wearing chipals to look exotic, you know? Like, I'm just tired of it. I'm so fucking tired. So, complicated feelings, man. I still think I overreacted. However, I also think I was right to be a little bit frustrated. I think that was valid. It's also something I've noticed as well on my parents' generation. Whenever they see stuff like that, they're like, oh, cool, I'm glad white people are appreciating and taking an interest in our culture. Exactly, 3. But that's kind of like my response to when old people like it is, I'm like, but they're not appreciating your culture, right? There's a difference between appreciating and tokenizing. I think in that particular case, we were being tokenized. It wasn't a good vibe. I didn't feel appreciated. I felt like I was being worn like a costume. And the chipal isn't even that historically significant. It's not like she wore a fucking hanfu, you know? Like the chipal is a much more modern piece of clothing. It's very modern for the most part. In the modern sort of adaptation of it that she was wearing, it's a very modern take, right? If she wore a fucking hanfu, I'd have a lot more to say. But because it was a chipal, I'm like, I'm annoyed for certain reasons that are valid. And I disagree that this is appreciation. And I'll leave it there. There was this post I saw of the differences in opinion between diaspora tending to call it appropriation and those who had first-hand experience in their home country tending to call it appreciation. Yeah, Sunny Moon, I think I saw the same post. I think it was like a Twitter thread. It was quite well written about how people, basically like diaspora have the experience of being like edged out or seen as other in their community more often. And so we're more sensitive to like tokenization and appropriation versus, right, if you lived in, for example, Japan, where everyone around you is Japanese for the most part, you're not gonna be very sensitive to like people wearing Japanese things that are not their culture, right? Like you would have just been like, oh, that's cool. Like, I'm glad you enjoy the kimono or the yukata or whatever, you know, like you're just not sensitive to it. It's not an experience that you've had to like suffer through. So, I mean, that's a really quick summary. The thread was much better written than my random word spew just now, but I'll try to find it. This was a ride, wasn't it? I'm glad you guys had fun. Thank you all for voting alongside and sharing your thoughts and opinions. I feel like we had some really good conversations tonight, actually. The cultural appropriation one, I was really surprised to have. And I'm always really happy to see chat like being, you know, thoughtful and nuanced in approach. Like I'm very proud of you all. Cause I'm always like, oh, the youngins, you know, and then I show up and I'm like, y'all, a lot of y'all are youngins. And I feel like you have very nuanced takes. Like it restores my faith in humanity to see y'all going off with me and just like, you know, having respectful back and forths. Thank you all so much. Whether it is morning, afternoon, or evening, have a wonderful time of day and I will see you all next stream, hopefully. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Have a good time. Bye-bye.